welcome to the Town of Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting Tuesday, March 7, 2023. Can you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? Vice Chairman Nyman, could you kick us off?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at youtube.com/WRPS-Rockland. Please go to WRPSRockland.com for further information. First on the agenda, community announcements. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. The only announcement I have is that tomorrow, which is Wednesday, March 8th, at 8:30 a.m. at the Senior Center, I will be there with Fire Chief Duffy to answer any questions that folks might have about the proposed fire station building project. So Wednesday the 8th, 8:30 a.m. at the Senior Center. You don't have to be a senior to ask questions, and everybody's welcome. And there'll be other events as well. That's all I have.
Okay. Next on the agenda, review and approval of minutes, 2/21/23.
motion to approve the minutes of February 21st, 2023.
Motion.
I have a motion, and do I have a second? So you're the second?
Second,
Okay.
yeah.
So all those in favor? And that's unanimous, because, and two abstentions. Yep. Thank you. Next on the agenda, entertainment license request for Top Shelf Bistro, 120 Bill Delahunt Parkway. Is anybody here from Top Shelf Bistro? You want to come on up to the microphone? Just introduce yourself and let us know what you're looking to do.
My name is Paul Toronto from Top Shelf Bistro at Level Arena.
Okay, so the application itself didn't specify whether it's indoor, outdoor, or both.
Could it be both?
What was your intent at the time? I mean, it could always be both in the future.
Truthfully, it's winter time, so I didn't actually even think of
Okay.
the summer at this point. But to begin with, we're looking for upstairs on the off days, just to maybe get some acoustic guitar, not live bands, just to make it less of just a rink and a little bit more of a venue. Get people in to eat some cheeseburgers. And outside, we do have it all fenced off.
Yeah.
We do have an outside, seating area and TVs, and it would be nice. I think there is a lot of space between the neighbors. If we could look at both.
And I do appreciate that. I think maybe we push that back so that
Sure.
so
Yeah.
the abutters can be present.
Yep.
Just in case they have any questions or concerns
Sure.
about it.
Sure.
So for the time being, we'll treat this as specifically an indoor license for entertainment.
Sure.
I've entertained a motion for indoor license for entertainment.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? That's unanimous.
Thanks so
Congrats.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, school committee vacancy, joint appointment with Rockland School Committee per Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11. Applicants are Dr. Julie Minahan and Mrs. Belinda Ranstrom. Chairperson Maroney, if you guys want to open your meeting.
Thank you for having us, Chairman O'Loughlin and the Select Board. I will entertain a motion to open our school committee meeting for Tuesday, March 7th.
Motion to open the school committee meeting for study.
May I have a second?
Second that motion.
All those in favor? And that's a vote.
Okay, we are now in joint session with the school committee. So the way we are going to end up doing this is, actually, if we could possibly, Dr. Cron, could you possibly grab another chair? We'll bring them both up at the same time, and we'll just go back and forth on the questions. Sure. Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so if Dr. Julie Minahan and Mrs. Belinda Ransom could come up to the microphone, that'd be great. So this position has become available based on the due to the resignation of former Chairman Dan Biggins from the school committee. So typically, the way that these procedures work, it's been a practice of the board to where it's a joint appointment, but the practice of this board is to defer primarily to the will of the other board, the board that the person is being appointed to. I think we probably feel for them in the sense that, you know, we wouldn't particularly enjoy another board appointing somebody to our board. So, you know, we will generally defer to the board that the person is going to be sitting on. So with that said, just a quick question to get everything started, and we can start with Ms. Ranstrom. If you could, each briefly take 2 minutes and just tell us what qualifies you for this position.
I've been in education since very, very long time. So I've been a student, I have been a teacher, I have been an administrator. I am also licensed as a vocational director. And I know the big difference between Chapter 74 and Chapter 70 and how important both of those are to the environment of education. I've been subbing here in Rockland. I moved to Rockland in 2019. And I've been subbing here and have so enjoyed meeting the teachers, the students. I love the curriculum that's been going on here, and the support that curriculum has given to the teachers within Rockland Public. When the opening became available, I thought, what a great another avenue of being able to experience education within an environment of students and now of the town. So that's one of my reasons for moving forward in this.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Minahan?
Well, I have lived in Rockland for over 25 years. My girls both went through the Rockland Public School system. My grandchildren are now going through the Rockland Public School system. I was a teacher at the middle school for 17 years before moving on to an administrative role in Avon. So I'm trying to give back. My husband and I really believe in giving back to the community in which we live, and this is another way I feel like I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Chairperson Maroney?
Well, Chairperson O'Loughlin, you sort of stole my thunder with your question. I was going to ask you, why did you want to be here on the school committee with us? So if you don't mind, maybe just continuing on with what you just said a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay. I look at the school committee as an organization that helps drive education, and we all know that the youngest population in our community is the most important, because those are the people that will be running our community in the future. How we shape that, what kind of education we provide, and the opportunities we provide our children and our students is so vital to keeping our community strong. And that's what I want for Rockland, is to stay and continue being a very strong community.
Thank you.
Which is very true. I totally agree with that. My grandchildren also attend Rockland Public. My career has been in Quincy and Boston, and coming into Rockland has been just such a nice, calming, but very educational experience. I know that's kind of an interesting mix, but I have so enjoyed going through the school and really helping out. And now, to understand the policy side of it, to see the town's aspect in it, I think is a very important. We're enjoying living in Rockland, and I think that this is a way to begin to really integrate into Rockland more through the school committee.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the school committee? Any questions from the members of the Board of Selectmen?
Hello, first of all, I'd like to thank both of you for coming in and um, for your engagement in the school system. My question to you both would be, what do you each consider the greatest challenge right now to the school system, and perhaps your recommendation about that challenge?
So at this point, I know that, and I don't know if the governor has released funds yet or not. I know from the fund part of it where you're also needing to decide for payroll, you're needing to decide personnel, for busing, all of that. The new school is absolutely gorgeous. All of that plays into some very important decisions that need to be made, and it's always the bottom line of money in a lot of ways, which is very sad, but it is. But I think it would be, it's a really good challenge, and it's also a place to contribute into a community, to be able to talk collectively on those aspects of it.
Thank you.
While finances is always going to be an issue with any board, I believe one big challenge right now in our schools, and I see it almost every day, is trying to get our kids back into school. Help them see how important it is to be there, get them involved in the different athletics and activities, the different clubs, making them feel like they can be part of a community again, which I believe the last few years kind of took away from our kids. Also helping them not just get back to where we quote unquote should be, but help them understand that where they are is okay, and that we are going to help them as educators, as parents, as community members, become the best adults, the best graduates, the best high schoolers, the best middle schoolers they can be, based on where they are at this moment. I don't think a lot of people, adults especially, understand what COVID and being out of school took away from kids, especially the youngest kids. And I think that's a big challenge right now, getting them back to where what we see as where we used to be, where some of them don't even know what that means. So getting them back into school and as a community is a very big importance right now.
Anybody else? Forward?
Yeah, I was curious, do you have any like cool new progressive ideas that Rockland hasn't thought of yet to inject into the system, to maybe new traditions to start, or fundraising, or anything like that?
I personally have taken a lot of Rockland's ideas to Avon. But if I come up with any, I'll definitely add them in.
At this time, I really don't have anything to interact in with that, except, no, I really don't, because I don't want to speak out without understanding completely.
Yeah, no. I had this idea for a fundraiser because nobody likes Christmas gift wrapping, but to have high school students gift wrap for people around town. Might be a fun fundraiser.
Definitely.
Anyway, I'll shut up. But thank you.
Anybody have anything else? Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm not going to say that you guys were well coached, but great answers as far as funding being the number one concern with both Alan and Jane in the room. I should have seen that one coming.
Yeah.
I kid, though.
Yeah.
So with that, Chairperson Maroney, do you guys have any discussion, any conversation, any thoughts?
I think they're both well qualified. I think we're lucky that we're sitting here with two wonderful candidates in front of us. We couldn't have asked for two better candidates, I will say. The fact that we had one and then two come up, that was exciting for us. This isn't the day and age when we ran 6 years ago, you longer than me, Mr. O'Loughlin. school committee it was different then, 6 years ago, than it is now. So I appreciate that you're putting yourselves out there for this tonight and to sit on the committee with us. With that said, I don't have anything else. Do you, ladies? I don't want to be a one-man band up here.
No, I also just thank both candidates for coming forward and wanting to contribute and say that, you know, regardless of who moves forward, that there's always opportunities and hopes that that both of you will continue to support the schools as we move forward and find different ways to do that.
No? Neither of you? Okay.
Is there a motion or?
We will
any preference,
entertain a
any thoughts?
motion to appoint.
I would like to nominate Ms. Belinda Branscombe for the appointment for the school committee position.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
And we want to do a roll call vote.
So you have a motion and a second. Okay, we can take a roll call vote. Chairperson Moran?
I say yes. Aye.
Dr. Swan?
Aye.
Ms. Hennessy?
Aye.
Ms. Davidson?
Aye.
Okay, so that's 4-0. Selectperson Childs?
Hi, so because we're agreeing.
Selectperson Shorto?
I agree.
Selectperson Edom?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Nyman?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so Ms. Ransom, congratulations.
Thank you.
Received a one-year position. Julia, I obviously understand that you're also on the ballot as well, right? So, you know, we wish you obviously the best of luck in the campaign. All right, thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, Jill, do you want to adjourn your portion of the meeting?
Yes. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? And congratulations to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
for coming. Thank you for having us as well.
Okay. Tiffany will be right back in. Okay, in the meantime, next on the agenda is the South Shore Regional Vocational Technical School update. Tom Hickey, superintendent, and Bob Mahoney, you coming up too? School committee chairman? Oh, he's going to do the talking, all right. You're the muscle?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's got my back.
Yeah, I know he does.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Superintendent Hickey, welcome, thank you, it's been a while.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for having us back. The last time probably I would have been back to the board, it might have been in 2018, the last time we were looking to revise our regional agreement. So I'm here tonight to give you a brief overview of a warrant article that's coming your way to the town regarding a further revision of our regional agreement. The major impetus for this is the inclusion of another town into our regional school district, the town of Marshfield. So we were approached by the town a little over a year ago. They established a regional planning committee and engaged with members of our school board, and we talked about the terms and conditions for them entering the district. And so whenever you enlarge or shrink a district, you have to change your regional agreement. So if it were up to us, we would have made a few surgical changes, included some terms and conditions, and brought it to our towns. The Department of Education says, you've got to do a full physical on your regional agreement, take a look at everything. And so we did, and with their diligent help, we made a series of changes, most of which were not substantive, clerical, formatting. It's a better looking document, it's a cleaner, more efficient document. But I want to point out to you the major changes to the agreement. The first one includes the terms and conditions for Marshfield joining. When we spoke to Marshfield, my priorities that I brought to our school committee were We have an established stabilization fund that our 8 communities have been paying into. The first thing we need to address is how they could make themselves a part of that so that there was no concern in the future, should we use the stabilization fund, that it was someone else's dollars being used to offset future assessments. They agreed. We used a simple enrollment projection looking at the number of children in Marshfield over the next 5 years in current grades 4 through 8 compared to our sending towns. We came up with a percentage of a little under 18%. So the first major condition is you will contribute a little under $400,000 over a 10-year period, and that will be used essentially to augment the funds we have. The school committee will determine what to do with those funds, but ultimately, I see it as a haircut to offset what our existing 8 communities have paid in. The second condition, probably as important but addressing a different topic, is we're also a school, as you probably know, that's in the MSBA pipeline. We're 1 year in, looking at a new, larger school. To bring in a new community, perhaps as early, this would go into effect for fiscal '25, to bring in a new community and ask them to pay a share of the debt, it's a little tricky, because what we wouldn't want to do is to fix a debt share when their enrollment was artificially low. In fiscal '25, they will have 1 grade of recruited students in the building. I anticipate that, just for context, I anticipate next year there will be 3 Marshfield students in the building. I think they'll all be seniors, so it'll be a genuine turnover. So what we agreed to and we put into the regional agreement was essentially we will measure your debt share on an adjustable basis through the first 5 fiscal years that you're a member of the district. That would provide enough time for our district and the town of Marshfield to do a proper exploratory recruitment engagement with the town, make sure that the families in that community know the resources there. And so when we look at those October 1 report numbers, that's those official student report numbers, we'll look at the numbers on October 1st, 2028. And whatever those numbers are, numerator, Marshfield kids in the building, denominator, the total number of in-district kids, will create a percentage. And from the 6th fiscal year on, that would be Marshfield's share. Now, all of this is predicated on the assumption that as we move forward in the MSBA process, we will probably have a project design go to our voters for approval sometime in the fall of 2024 or in early 2025, a project that would have at least 2 years of construction and a ribbon cutting on whatever I'm talking about to happen in 2028. So we've got to be forward thinking, and what we've come up with, I think, is a fair model where with each passing year, the debt share of the new community we anticipate will grow, and therefore the haircut given to our existing towns would also grow. Because in the fall of '24, when we're asking our towns to support a project, we're obviously going to have to do all the financial analysis, and we're going to have to do all the projections. What's my town's share? And so 2 things are going to happen. Whatever the share is, it's probably going to be the high water mark, because we can also begin to say that the haircut from a new community will reduce your assessment as time goes on.
So can I just stop you for 1 second?
It's appropriate that you'd stop me anytime, because this gets
Perfect.
weedy pretty quickly.
It's usually, I guess you're phrasing the haircut. How will that specifically affect enrollment for Rockland students?
Yeah. So I would anticipate in the short term there would be, I'll give you 2 answers. The first one is we won't have a new school until fiscal '29 at the earliest. So starting in fiscal '25, we would begin to onboard a new town, yet the ceiling of our enrollment will probably hover around the 650 mark that we're at. It could go up a little higher. Again, we'll have very few non-resident students. So the short answer is it will have an impact. However, as you know, Rockland's interest in South Shore is very strong. We've got over 60 applications for about 23 slots. But historically, Rockland, Whitman, and Abington, along with Hanson, they have taken advantage appropriately of available seats from communities that don't use all of their seats. So where would the seats disappear? They wouldn't, those extra seats won't entirely disappear, but I would suggest that rather than maybe having 50 or 60 seats available for the waiting list, that number will shrink, and it might be around 30 or so. Once we get to fiscal 29, it won't take that long. I mean, by the end of this calendar year and early 24, we should have some projections on what a new building would look like. I can tell you that the MSBA has committed to supporting our project in the following ways. We have to study a base model of 645 students, but they acknowledge that our school needs to be bigger in terms of available seats. They acknowledge the increased capacity. So they gave us two answers. They said, if Marshfield doesn't join your district, we will reimburse you for a school up to 805 students. So that's a delta of about 155. If Marshfield joins, we will reimburse you for a school that could grow as much as 975. So with the long answer, I think you will see a market correction. There'll be more seats available across the board. But as I've said to every community, we all grab a hold of certain numbers. They're going to build a 1,000-student school. I don't know if we can afford it. And I don't know if our site could actually sustain it. The parking spaces on a septic system surrounded by wetlands. Not trying to be negative, just trying to be realistic. So that actual magic number of what size school could we build will really give the most accurate answer to that question. It's just going to take a little bit longer. So in the short term, I do not think that all 8 of our communities are going to use up all of their allotted seats, which means there'll be extra seats available, just not as many as perhaps in the past. The trade-off, or I guess the benefit, my projection is if Marshfield sends us 25 students a year, they'll be responsible for about 18% of a school building project. Our project manager said, I said, give me a bar napkin number, because when you start talking projects, you got to start, even if they're kind of fake. So a 1,000-student school could cost $300 million. We're getting 55% reimbursement right now for the feasibility portion of our project. So if you back out 55% off of $300 million, you're down to $135 million. If a new member community is eventually going to own upwards of 20% of that, that's about $26 million. So I think the timing of a new community, coupled with a massive project, and you can imagine, with never mind one town, but at any given time there are members of our district who are taking on other debt projects. There's no way we could time the rolling off of old debt and the arrival of new debt, school projects, municipal projects. So I think this helps to provide a favorable financial outlook by bringing on another roommate when the bills are going to go up.
So with that being said, bringing on another roommate, as in Marshfield, is there any interest from any other communities like Pembroke or
Yes.
any other area? Okay.
Yes, and yes, and yes. I was at the Pembroke School Committee last month at their invitation. Pembroke is a community close by, right, geographically, and their kids have no access to either our school anymore because of some regulatory changes or Silver Lake. In the past, we've had interest from Hull. What I have said to folks who are interested in Pembroke is, in my personal opinion, if you were asking me what I recommend, I would say our school district has to allow this process with Marshfield to happen and settle and then reassess. And quite honestly, it probably would take a little longer because we would want to reassess adding additional communities based on the capacity of a future building. And my messaging is, it's one thing to add one community with some surplus seats, and okay, there'll be a little bit of an adjustment. But anything more than that too quickly, I think, would not be a wise move for all concerned. But, so to answer your question, Mr. Chair, there's definite interest.
Okay.
So that's that's most of the oxygen on changing this regional agreement. I can just mention a few other items. The only other substantive changes that were made, one was at the direction of the Department of Education, where they wanted us to include what they called a default method for incurring debt. The regional school board has the power to kick things off with a debt authorization. We did this in the spring of 2021 when we sought a debt authorization. And what DESE said to us was, your regional agreement now says you need a 2/3 vote of the full membership in order to move a debt matter from your school committee to your towns. And they suggested, or they, somewhere between suggested and wagged a finger, but they said, no, you really need to have you got to lower one of the voting thresholds to get a debt matter, at least in front of your communities. What that means is that in this regional agreement as amended, it would take a simple majority of the school committee to move a debt matter forward if they chose the method that you've seen from us in the past, at least 2 years ago, which is under a certain portion of the statute that basically says, you can vote it, you got to bring it to all your towns, and if any one town says no, it's dead. So it lowers the bar to move this along. It doesn't lower the bar on the town's ability to say yay or nay. My personal opinion, I would have left it alone, but I needed to also get this approved by DESE Legal in order to be able to bring it to you. And then the last couple of, they're substantive, but I don't think critical, is we took our own look at a section of the regional agreement dealing with what happens if a town wants to withdraw. And we made 2 tangible changes. One is we clarified that you need a majority of the membership of the committee to vote that. We wanted to remove any vague language in the agreement that said, when it says by a majority vote of the committee. First logical question is that of those present and voting? Is it a quorum? Is it the full membership? So we cleaned that up, and we said it would be a majority of the membership. To have a town withdraw without having a sizable input from the committee could have a major financial impact on the remaining communities. So we clarified that. And we also said in writing that if a town wanted to withdraw, that our school board would form a subcommittee in order to directly communicate with the town, because that also would take the formation of an amendment. It's almost not worthy of me having to spend too much time on, but it is something that we did. It was a concrete change. Other than that, I think I've probably hit the substantive changes of the agreement. And so with this, with the support of 2/3 of our existing 8 communities and the support of the town of Marshfield at respective town meetings this spring, it would then go to the Commissioner of Education, who we presume would sign this promptly. And then Marshfield will become a member as of July 1st, 2024. That would be the first month, that's the month we reorganize our school committee. That would be the first month that they'd have a voting member of the school board.
Okay. Any questions?
Just a comment. I'm so in awe of your wizardry with all of this.
Oh, it's the earpiece, you can't see it. I'm on
Yeah,
camera.
okay,
What was
okay.
that, Bob? What was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
It's not Bob. Come
I know.
on. There's no way it's Bob.
I appreciate that,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Although it might be Bob.
Incredible.
Maybe, Mike, if I can just...
Yeah, go ahead, Doug,
just
please.
to be
Yep.
very clear for those watching at home. So everything that the superintendent explained, this is going to be an article on the town meeting warrant in our annual town meeting in May. And it'll most likely be at the very end of the warrant to help accommodate his schedule, because he's bouncing around a lot of town meetings.
Thanks, Doug. We have 4 town meetings on that
Same
night, so.
one.
Yeah.
That's where the wizardry will come in.
Yeah.
I need parking spaces, thank you.
Yeah.
Who will be presenting, who will be there to answer questions specifically?
Between Bob and I,
Okay.
yep.
All right. Just in case you're delayed. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Superintendent Hickey? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
Always,
having us.
Always
you.
impressed by your thorough presentations.
Yes.
And all the work you do.
Appreciate it.
So, thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Good night.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, announcement of successor collective bargaining agreement. Police Superiors Union, New England Police Benevolent Association, Inc., Local 175. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. So I am pleased to formally announce the last union agreement that we have negotiated with all of the units. This is, as you just noted, for police superiors, similar to the others, where it's generally a 2.5% wage increase, except for the last year where it's 2%. The significant items similar to the patrol unit is agreement to move out of civil service. That will be something that will be a town meeting warrant article for both police and fire, the removal, but this includes in the collective bargaining agreement their acknowledgement and agreement and cooperation with that. Also of significant note is secondary education. So we have increased our education incentive for police superiors, similar to how we've done it with police patrol. The exact percentages are 10% for an associate's degree, 20% for a bachelor's, and 25% for a master's degree. And I think this is important because the better educated our police officers are, the better they perform, and the less likelihood there is of bad outcomes and liability to the town. So I want to thank them for good negotiations, and by good I mean no one was 100% satisfied in the end, and that's the way it should be. Everybody had to give a little something up, but I think it's a fair agreement, and we are now done for the next 3 years. So that's all I have on that.
Anybody have any comments? Okay, thank you, Doug. Good job on that. Next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated.
I have none.
Okay. Next on the agenda, FY24 budget, town administrator presentation.
Just going to switch seats. All right, great. Well, before I begin, I want to give a special thank you for a lot of people helped with this, our whole finance team, but in particular, Assistant Town Administrator Jen Constable, and especially our town accountant Scott Curtis, both of whom are here. And I especially just want to recognize Scott because he's relatively new in his position here in town. His clerk in his office is also new, and for virtually the entire time he's been here, he's been without an assistant town accountant. His office has been very short-staffed, and so it's tough because there's a lot of day-to-day work, whether it's processing payroll and bills and all the other day-to-day stuff, filings with the DOR, and then on top of all that, we need to pull a budget together and do a lot of other things. So I greatly appreciate all of his help with everything, including the budget. So the format of this is going to be pretty similar to other years. And just as an overview again, I recognize we are much later than we normally are, again, beating a dead horse because we were waiting for the governor's budget to come out. And I'm glad we did because otherwise we would have been making a lot of cuts only to undo them. Here's the dashboard, which we've spoken about before. Can you remind me, Mike, have I already gone over the dashboard this year?
Yes.
At a previous meeting? All right, good. So I don't think...
Or maybe just at the end of December.
Okay, so I think maybe the only things that could have changed since then would be in looking at our average tax bill and comparing that to the statewide average. There have been more cities and towns that reported to the Department of Revenue. So interestingly, and to my surprise, even with the Phelps School debt exclusion fully baked into our tax rate, our average single-family tax bill is actually still under the statewide average. I thought we'd be a little bit over with that big debt exclusion, but clearly other communities are increasing as well for projects or new growth and et cetera. So I recognize, I don't mean to minimize the burden on taxpayers. $6,800 for an average tax bill is certainly difficult, but it's not out of line when you look at the rest of the state. We're still under the average, even with a significant debt exclusion that will fall off the tax bills in 30 years. The only other number I think could have changed would be the property tax collection rate from FY22. It's now over 98%, which is very favorable. So that's, and the rest, I think we've talked about before. That box in the lower left-hand corner, I have updated the numbers for the fire station project and some of the sewer projects, just so we're all aware of those liabilities that we have to handle. So our budget objectives for this year, I was hoping to address some of our most urgent budget shortfalls, which I'll go over in detail in a few minutes. We also, of course, have to implement all the collective bargaining increases. I just talked about the Superiors Union and for example, the education incentive for police and fire, and that was a very expensive proposal to agree to. Again, we and you, because you obviously endorsed it before it was ratified, but those types of things, that has to be funded right out of the gate because that's a legally binding agreement. And then our objectives were also to increase our reserve funding and OPEB stabilization, the regular stabilization, as well as our capital stabilization. So I'm pleased to say in what I'm proposing, I think we are accomplishing all these objectives. As it relates to revenues, Superintendent Hickey was just here. He didn't really need to get into our assessment because he knew there wasn't much to talk about because we had very good news. Our assessment actually went down by quite a bit this year, so that was very good news for us. Our health insurance, our projected increase, and we're now using our most current head count, taking into consideration both town and school employees, active employees, those we anticipate will be employed next year, and good news from our health insurance broker, given our claims history, our premiums are not going up very much, so we're actually projecting less than a 3% increase in our health insurance budget. That's a big deal because our health insurance budget is huge, so every percentage on that large number is important. And then lastly, as I said, we were waiting for the governor's budget to come out, and as I indicated, I'm glad we did because it's a significant boost to Rockland, over $2 million in increased state aid. So I generally, I feel comfortable going forward with the governor's budget. In my experience, I don't think the House or the Senate tend to go back. Sometimes they even go up a bit. I should also add, Scott and Jen, if there's anything you guys ever want to chime in as I'm yapping here, please feel free. So as you all know, we have the 70-30 split with the schools. So Scott ran the formula, same formula we always do, where we look at certain revenues, taxes, 2.5, new growth, et cetera, and then we net out certain shared expenses like health insurance, property and liability insurance, that type of thing. We get to net revenue, then we split it 70-30. So those are the numbers, nearly 1.9 million for the schools and a little over 800,000 on the town side. And I should highlight, as soon as we calculate those, we meet with the school superintendent and Jane Hackett, and they understand the math and we're all on the same page. Again, just quick pie charts showing where our money comes from and where it goes, our sources of revenue to start. The purpose of this isn't so much for the values as much as for the proportions, and it's pretty much similar to prior years. Over half of our revenue comes from local property taxes. We have a big chunk coming from state aid, 29% of our revenue coming from state aid. That's a lot bigger than many of our neighboring communities. And again, that's a double-edged sword, as I've talked about before. In a year like this, it's great for us because we're getting more revenue and we can accomplish more things. When the state's in tough times, we get hit harder because a much greater proportion of our budget is reliant on that. Local receipts at 12% and debt exclusions at 7%. Our expense category is also proportionally, hasn't really changed much. The biggest single department, of course, is education, and I put the footnote in there that 41% also includes South Shore Tech and the Norfolk Agricultural School. And of course, there's other portions of things like benefits and insurance that are also related to education, but those are, for this purpose, just categorized separately. After education, public safety, obviously benefits is the next largest proportion, but as a regular department goes, public safety is the next largest after that. Again, this is fairly standard, these proportions, hasn't changed too much. I guess I would just say that our debt service is going to start going up now that the school project is completed or virtually completed. As far as our process goes, again, we put out budget request forms to all department heads. We received a lot of requests. I am recommending that we try to incorporate many of them, if not most of them. There's some that I don't feel that we're able to afford, and I'll line those up at the end. But I am recommending a significant budget increase, 6.9% on our general government operating budget this year. And I'll talk a little bit more about how it's targeted to make inroads in specific critical areas And again, I'm just highlighting implementing all the union contract increases because they are significant. Not so much the individual wage increase, the 2.5%, that's not excessive. But again, things like educational incentives, different longevity steps, things like that. Again, I feel very good about our union agreements. I think they're fair deals for all of our units. As it comes to salaries, again, we just talked about the union agreements, generally 2 to 2.5% plus steps. I've already talked about the public safety education incentive. On the department head and non-union side, it's generally 2.5% is what we're looking at for wage increases. But as I've talked about in prior years, our HR director, Stacy Callahan, did do a salary comp analysis with other similar communities in our region to look at our department head and other non-union salaries. Because we've done it for other union contracts, it was time to do that for the remaining department heads. So you'll see when you look through the line item budget, there are a handful, and I want to stress it's just a handful, of individual department heads that the data clearly shows were out of whack and needed to have an adjustment.
And some of those, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, they were initially set to be caught up prior to COVID, and some
That's
of those
right.
were kind of cut off.
That's
the,
right.
Cutting floor at that point because you saw COVID happen.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
So, I
of
mean, it
that.
might look like in some areas that there's significant increases, but these were increases that should have been, they'd be a lot less compared to the market now if they were implemented prior to
That's
COVID
right.
when
Yeah.
we initially went for it. So.
That's right, and again, and it's all supported by data.
Mhm.
This is not anecdote. So I'm going to go over next highlights of all the significant increases in various departments and line items. The first is, as we all know, John Lucas has recently retired. John was, I'll call him the office manager. I don't think that was his technical title. Probably, I forgot his technical title, but he was the senior administrative person in that department. Our junior clerk, which is a part-time position, she's been promoted and she'll be taking over his full-time position. So what will be vacant part-time junior clerk position, we're recommending become full-time. This has been something that the building inspector has been asking me for years to do, and it's important to all of us because I've personally witnessed many times going downstairs and the counter's closed because the building inspector, the other inspectors are out doing inspections. The senior assistant might be out sick, might be on a vacation day, whatever, and the part-time person, that's only half-time, they're out that day, and then a customer goes to the window and it's closed. So better customer service, especially in a department that's generating a lot of revenue for the town. I think it's, given this transition time, it's the right time to bring that position up to full-time. The land use planner, we've been unsuccessful in hiring. Town meeting did appropriate $80,000, which we believed, and at the time made sense, that was a reasonable salary for this position in Rockland. We've been completely unsuccessful, and it's not just Rockland. Other entities, whether it's MAPC or other towns, are also having difficulty hiring land use planners. But in looking around and talking to a number of other town managers, I think if we can add another 10,000 and get that salary up to 90, I think we could get better luck in attracting some candidates to fill this position because it really is important. There's a lot happening in town that we need that work. Traffic control lighting, it's a relatively small increase. Those are for our traffic lights, self-explanatory. The next four things all relate to Dave Taylor, I'll just say, related to highway and tree and stormwater. So we can certainly have him come in at your next meeting if you'd like. These are all just related to cost increases in the industry. It's just everything is costing more. Hiring equipment, repairing equipment, buying materials, just everything is costing more. So all these increases here, 30,000, 70,000, 50,000, it's all related to cost increases, and also on the storm water side, also related to just physically doing more work as well. This work is required by the state DEP. You've heard of MS4. There's very strict requirements on that. And in the past, because our stormwater budget is relatively new, in Rockland, we hadn't actually budgeted for police details before, which are needed. So Dave had just been taking that from other parts of his budget, which is not good because then he's not getting as much done in those areas. Next, this is I think an important addition. We talked about the Veterans Department recently, where formerly we had 2 part-time people. Now we have 1 full-time veterans agent, Tim White, who we're very happy he is with us. he was able to secure a new van, or I should say a new used van, solely for veterans. I say used, but it's from a dealer. It's in like fantastic shape, and it's a great vehicle, but it's a little bit larger than the smaller vehicles we've used in the past. And our volunteer drivers really aren't comfortable or able necessarily to drive that van, and his time is really better spent helping clients get the benefits, the Chapter 115 benefits, lining them up with the VA, et cetera. If he's out on the road for half a day taking someone to the VA, it's just not the best use of his time for residents. So we're looking at a part-time driver. The senior center is just, getting a little bit older. Some of the systems there are needing more and more maintenance, so our new COA directors requested some increased funds in maintenance. McKinley, this is a significant increase, and this is really directly related to what we anticipate will be a shift from the school department moving some of their programs out of the McKinley building into the school next year. And if they're no longer in the building, they're no longer paying rent, and they relied on that rent and their revolving fund to take care of their maintenance. So this would raise and appropriate general funds to offset the loss of rental income. I should highlight, with any time we say the word McKinley Building, the words McKinley Building these days, this is all kind of temporary because, we do have a feasibility study for new building, and hopefully we'll be able to construct that building. If we don't, we're going to have to make some decisions because this is not a really sustainable long-term plan. This is more temporary to get us through our next set of decision-making on the McKinley Building. Also related to recreation is a program leader. This what I believe is going to be split half by revolving and half by general fund, kind of similar to that building department clerk going from part-time to full-time. In order for this very small department to be able to continue doing all the things which they know they're doing so well, they just need a little bit more staff to get it done. So this is just adding a half-time person in that role. And I should also add, they actually had this position earlier pre-COVID. We ended up cutting it during COVID and it never got it added back. Additional professional and technical services for the accounting department. I just talked about how short-staffed they've been, so they've had to rely a little bit on some outside assistance. It's also for things like training, as we unroll like new modules in our financial management system, things like that. It's very helpful. And then this last one, this is a significant increase, and I want to talk about it for a moment. This is something since the day I started, I've been working with Jen and talking to HR Director Stacy Callahan about trying to build out not only an HR department, which we've begun. We've created a department. We've hired a part-time assistant, and that's been a fantastic success. But one thing we're really woefully inadequate on is professional development and training. If you look at an organization, the size of the town of Rockland, where we have call it a $20 million, general fund operating budget, and we're spending like $1,000 a year on training. I mean, it's embarrassing. And, we take advantage of everything that's free that we can. We take advantage of grants whenever they're available for this type of thing, but this would really create a more robust operating budget. And it wouldn't just be limited toward one thing. This could include boards and committees for, all kinds of training for them, as well as staff and professional development. And I think, given some of the problems we've found trying to recruit people for vacant positions, which is not just a Rockland issue. The economy's changed, as we all know. People are looking for different work environments these days. Some of the research we've seen, there's definitely a desire. People want to go to an organization where they think they have a chance of learning and progressing and not just getting pigeonholed in one place where they'll never get to grow. So that is a significant change, but I think it's for the better. So some of the requests that were made that I'm not recommending that we're able to fund at this time. The first is the facilities director, and I hate to say it, but and part of the issue there is I feel like every year I'm making excuses, and I kind of am, but there's reasons for it. I want to have more conversations with the school department because I hope that we'll be able to have a greater efficiency by combining with the schools. And it really just wasn't fair to have those conversations in the middle of a $70 million school building project where their facilities director was literally working 24/7, keeping that project going. But that really is at the top of my list going forward. The police department has been requesting another detective for a couple of years now. Highway department has been requesting for additional laborer. The recreation department also asked for funding for an event manager. I mean, we've seen the growth in recreation where they're doing other types of things now, like the markets and the street fairs and things like that. And so they're looking to kind of build that out even more. And again, all these are worthy things. It's just we're not able to do everything. And then lastly, at the Parks Department, we have increased last year their seasonal staff, funding for seasonal staff. And I think, again, as the economy's changed a bit, they have not been as successful with summer help as they've been in the past. So Peter Yule's really looking to hire an additional full-time laborer, somebody a little bit more professional that's fully committed. So, these are all worthy things, and they'll stay on the list for next year. So one thing that I'm pleased with is I'm recommending that we pump some money into our reserves. You can see the numbers, $150,000 into each OPEB stabilization and our capital stabilization. And importantly, what I'm recommending is that we actually, before I get to the bottom bullet, I'll say that I think you all know, but I'll remind you and also for the public, it's not just a matter of being conservative. It's really important, and especially important for our bond rating. That's one of the things that they specifically ask on every bond rating call is where are we at, how much are you contributing, and how are you paying for it? And it can't just be a one-time thing. They want to see that pattern. And whenever we go out to bond, whether it's for something small like we might possibly do with sewer, or something larger like a fire station or a rec center, the bond rating is critical because that affects our interest rate, which affects how much taxpayers have to pay for it. So it's not only there in case we need it in an emergency or we need it to fund our future, liabilities, but it helps us right now with our interest rates. And then the big point I want to make there on the bottom is, unlike prior years where we've used free cash to pay for this, I'm recommending we actually take it from raise and appropriate, take it from our operating budget, because again, the way the numbers shake out, we're able to afford that this year. And the benefit of that is that's going to free up that $450,000 in free cash for other needed one-time capital projects. Now, I know this is going to be really hard to read, so I'm not going to go through them all. I don't have my recommended list of capital articles yet because, again, we're a little bit behind. I'm hoping by next week we'll have a sense of where our free cash number will be. So for your next meeting on the 21st, I'll list out exactly what we're recommending. But if you look at the list, you'll see it does total in that left-hand column over $5.6 million. On the right-hand column, I went through this at a prior meeting, what I'm recommending we fund from marijuana host community agreement funds. I did add an additional $25,000 item on that column from the fire department, the CPR devices, and that's because I picked up last Saturday a $25,000 check from the new marijuana dispensary that opened that's going to go into this account, so that money will immediately be available to spend on that. So I'll have more info on this to come, but you can see everything here is worthwhile. The only item on here it is worthwhile, but it's not technically capital, is the one on the bottom. It's a school request for one-time funding to cover extraordinary special ed costs. So I'll work with the town accountant and the assistant administrator over the next week or so, and we'll have our recommendation. So next steps, the usual deal. We're going to continue to monitor all the numbers. We'll keep abreast of what's happening with the state, and keep working with the finance committee and the school committee and the capital planning committee. And ideally, I know it's very, very condensed. I mean, ideally, I'd love to be able to wrap this up at your next meeting on the 21st. If you don't feel like that's enough time, we can push that off to April 4th to give you, a couple more weeks to digest things and give me more feedback. But really, by the 4th, we'd need to really wrap it up, have you vote it, and sign the warrant.
So where was, any idea where the finance committee stands as far as their department meetings? I mean, this just came out very recently.
Yeah. So they've started.
Mm-hmm.
They have started, and I've gone through everything I just went through with them last week. They're meeting every week this month in March. So then there's 5 weeks in March. So they're going to have 5 meetings this month. And so they understand, I briefed them ahead of time that it's condensed and they understand it. I'll admit that, there were a couple of raised eyebrows at, the initial slide when I talked about the 6.9% increase. There was a little bit of, but when I explained this isn't like big raises going to everyone, when, once you lay out the details, decisions can be made to, pull back, for example, in highway and stormwater and these things. And, we certainly could, but the problem is we're not getting as much done. And also the problem is things cost more. So we're getting even less done because what little we can do is costing even more. But they are aware of the time frame. So that I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have now, or we can wait until the next meeting, whatever you'd prefer.
Any questions, any comments, concerns?
Yeah, I think I'd rather wait till we have more solid numbers to.
Well, the numbers are solid, so I don't want you to think that they're not, I don't believe in the next 2 weeks we're going to get any additional information from the state.
Okay.
I feel good about our numbers. The only thing that's going to change numbers-wise will be what we recommend for capital articles.
Right.
So that you don't have in front of you now. If you'd like, we can certainly look at that list, but as far as the operating budget goes, I feel confident in the numbers. And again, I wanted to be very transparent because, there are a number of increases in this budget. So I don't want to skip by that one. This is significant, again, this $450,000 coming from raise and appropriate. And again, these 2 slides are really the key ones because, again, while it is an increase in our budget, when you look at these are all legitimate, needed increases. So.
Do we have the potential to go to a AAA rating?
I'd say potential. I don't know that it would be likely. Well, let me say this. If the fire station project passes this April and May, we'll go for a bond rating shortly thereafter. I doubt we'll have enough time to get to AAA then. Down the road, I think we'd really need to pump up our reserves a lot more. When you go back to that initial slide.
Yeah.
Let me find it here.
So the goal is usually 3 to 5%.
Yeah,
stabilization.
and it's really on the high end of that. There's a
not
couple of
quite.
things. Yeah, so
That's
What
right.
I said,
there's that
1.4 million now.
Sure.
yeah, so we'd really have to get that stabilization fund balance significantly higher, and we'd probably also need to get, our OPEB balance up higher. One thing we're actively working on that relates to our bond rating that I mentioned earlier is formal financial policies. We talked about that before. And I'm very pleased with our last finance team meeting. I'm hoping to be able to bring you policies for approval, possibly as soon as either your next meeting or maybe a meeting in April. And that also will help us, because that's something specifically that the rating agencies called out was formal approved financial policy. So that's another thing we can check off the list. So we'll work toward it, but I'm not going to promise that
That's just
soon.
good,
Yeah, it's tough.
So depending on what the free cash number comes back at, do we have plans to also fund stabilization through free cash?
I don't know. We'll maybe. I think it's always good to put as much as we can in reserves.
Yeah, because I look at it and it's just about 1.5 million, adding 150,000 to that. I guess for 1.64 or something like that. But I think that 1.64 now is worth a lot less than it was, I think, prior to COVID when we had that money in the stabilization. So the 2 million.
We have repaid it. We have repaid
but
everything we took out.
But the 2 million that we had, or close to 2 million that we had before, it was a lot more valuable. To the same point that you said before, things are costing more and
True.
we're getting
Yep.
less done.
That's true.
So this doesn't stretch as far.
That's
being at
true.
The number. So.
Yeah. But we will
Yeah.
absolutely look at that. It just depends on the number. And
Yeah, I think that's something probably that the finance committee is definitely going to come back at. The 150 is great through raise and appropriate, but it's always one of those things that I think that committee really takes a source of pride from, is that the amount of money that goes into the stabilization. So
Yep.
just something to think
Yep.
about.
Good point.
Okay, anybody else?
Thank you, this is very comprehensive, and I'll look forward to next week continuing, or next meeting
Sure.
continuing, but thank you.
I was thinking it would be helpful to have Dave Taylor come to the next meeting since he
Yeah.
has so many of those.
Yeah, reach out
there
to him, 'cause
any
he's got
other
some-
department heads that you'd like to hear from related to increases particularly, or the
Well,
others?
Chuck's going to be here, isn't he?
Excuse me?
Isn't Chuck Ashen going to
Yep.
be here anyway?
Yep.
Okay.
But I wasn't sure if there were.
I'll
any-
take a look.
Let me know.
in
Yeah, let me
detail,
know. We,
and I'll go
we
back.
can. We
So
can
maybe if Stacy's up for it, maybe have Stacy come in and speak to the HR portion of it a little
Sure.
bit, just like some slightly more in depth as to what her specific plans are for the department, stuff like that.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
Okay, anything
Scott,
else?
is there any, Scott or Jen, anything else
Yeah.
you guys would want to add? All right. Let's get
Scott,
the-
good to see you. You're not here too often at the meetings. You're always crunching numbers in the office. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate your hard work.
Scott. Thank you, Jen.
You gotta run across it. Okay, next on the agenda, May 1st, 2023, town meeting warrant.
All right, thank you. So this was really hot off the press. I was adjusting this right before the meeting, so in your binder, you should have the most recent list. So the warrant, as I listed on the agenda, the warrant closes, normally, it will close on March 10th. I am going to recommend that at your next meeting on the 21st, you reopen it so we can add the capital articles that I haven't presented yet. So right now, at least, it looks like a quick special town meeting before the annual, just to do unpaid bills, and as I talked before about the extra 0.5% for the elected officials, because I wasn't able to give them a retroactive raise like I could do all the non-elected officials earlier, just because that's state law. I won't go through and read all of these. I'm happy to try to answer any questions, but maybe I'll just pick a couple to highlight. You'll see the transfers to OPEB stabilization, capital stabilization. You'll see on Article 8, I should also highlight that this is the order that I'm recommending we do the articles in as well. Included in Article 8, which is the revolving fund spending limits, I'm also including in there. I think we can do it as one article. If not, they'll be separate. Adding in the creation of the police private detail revolving fund, adding revolving fund for the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, which we'll be accepting, and increasing the Rockland Day spending limit up to $100,000. A significant item is number 13. This has been changing a lot recently, but we are, as of right now, in a position to acquire a good chunk of land, several acres of land at 48 Carey Street, which would be under the control of the Parks Commissioners, and it abuts 2 other parcels of land owned by the Parks Department. Would not be immediately developed or improved, but down the road, they look at putting in more ball fields and other type of park amenities. This would be funded from the Community Preservation Act. The exact mix of cash and debt we'll figure out later, but I'll probably recommend in this article that we get authorization to borrow, so we don't completely deplete all of our CPA funds in one shot. But I'll check with Scott and our financial advisors, but I'm thinking maybe we do half down and borrow half, something like that. And so we'll have options.
I think just also, as far as that article, that specific one, I think it's just really important to highlight the behind-the-scenes work that you guys have done, that your office has done, and that the Park Department and the Community Preservation Committee has done. I mean, the fact that we're at a position now that this is in writing in front of us, which is what we were looking for, and that as a board we pushed for it to protect the neighborhood from potential aggressive 40B projects. I think we can get this passed. This is a big win for the town. So if you can find, ways to defer some of the funding, from through bonding, that'd be great as well.
Right. And just to be clear, when I mentioned bonding and borrowing, that would not result in any
Not
increase on
exclusive.
taxpayers.
Yeah.
That borrowing
Nothing.
would be paid from the Community Preservation Act. You can borrow against future CPA receipts. So people are already paying the surcharge for the CPA. It would not go up. It would just, our available balance would go down every year because the first thing we would use with the revenue we collect is pay that debt service. But when you, relatively small amount spread over a number of years, it would be easily absorbed but would not result in a tax increase to the Rockland taxpayer. There's a lot of articles from the water department, which I won't get into, a lot of technical stuff about filters and meters and things like that. I have a meeting set up with Sherry Valley for later this week to confirm that I, in fact, have all the correct sewer articles. I might be missing a couple. We're going to confirm that with Sherry later this week. I know what I have here is accurate. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. One or two interesting things with sewer. One is there's an old bylaw. It was called an ordinance, but it's technically a bylaw that was passed a long time ago. And in working with our land use attorney, Bob Galvin, and the sewer commissioners, we really need to update that, especially because we need to kind of modernize it and also give the appropriate authority to the sewer commissioners so that every single little change doesn't have to go back to town meeting, to give them the ability to adopt regulations and be able to be a little bit flexible as they need to.
So Doug, at the next meeting, we'll have the sewer commissioners here. Will they be prepared to speak on?
They should be,
each
yeah.
one of these?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they should be.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And the next one also, when we were looking at the financial dashboard that I had on the screen earlier, one of the boxes was for capital stabilization, and it had the water balance, and it showed that sewer had not yet adopted it yet.
Right.
They would like to establish that now, so that's good. You see Articles 37 and 38 are getting town meeting authorization to remove police and fire departments from civil service, so that's significant. Article 39 will a formal vote to accept the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. We've talked about that before. Next article would establish cemetery commissioners. Article 41 would be to complete the land acquisition that was voted earlier at town meeting a couple years ago for the edge of Spring Lake Cemetery along Reed's Pond. We now need to take it by eminent domain because they don't have the proper paperwork to do a normal sale. Non-commercial dog kennel bylaw update. This is not a controversial item. This is really just kind of conforming definitions and things like that with state law. Maybe I'll have the animal control officer come in next week too, Mike. Just going to make a note of that. Dave and Stacy. Okay. And then lodging house sprinkler requirement from the fire chief. We talked before about limiting the number of marijuana dispensaries. I did a little bit of work with Attorney Galvin on this. And I think there's different ways that you can do this. Some of them require a ballot because of the way the town opted in. We opted in by a ballot. But there is a method that I'm recommending, which is we can tag it to the number of package stores through the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission. So if we limit it to, I think the number works out to say 45% of our package stores, that leaves us with our current 4 that we have approved. So that's how I think that one would be worded. And the next one is going to authorize the highway superintendent to be able to adopt his own regulations. That'll help the highway superintendent with future developments being able to collect the appropriate kind of impact fees and things like that from developers. Then we have 3 charter amendments. And I know Lori might want to talk about one of these in more depth, so I won't get into it in any detail. But as of right now, the Charter Review Committee did recommend 3 updates to the charter for this town meeting. One is to use gender-neutral language throughout the charter, so it would be Select Board, not Board of Selectmen. At the request of the Planning Board, this would provide the Planning Board with an alternate for their board. And it would also allow us to. Number 48 should not really say town charter update. It's really more of I'll figure out the right word for that article, but it would be an article that would extend the Charter Review Committee, because normally that committee would have to expire after 1 year. So that's not really a charter update, I don't believe, as much as just an article. And then Article 49 is what Superintendent Hickey was talking about earlier. That's the regional agreement amendment to allow Marshfield and all the other technical corrections. And then last, but certainly not least, is the last article, number 50, which would be the authorization for the new fire station, a $33 million debt exclusion. So as of right now, that's all I have for warrant articles. hopefully I haven't missed anything. I did shoot this out to all the department heads late this afternoon so they can double check it. Again, you'll see Article 14 is highlighted in yellow. That's all the capital articles. Once we figure out that, those will all be inserted in the warrant as well. So that's what I have for the town meeting warrant, unless you have any questions.
And once again, no zoning articles.
No zoning.
Okay, okay.
You know, there a couple of times it's come up where, you know, an idea for something, but I'll never recommend doing that rushed at the last minute. You know, those things, they need to take their time, go through the public hearing process, and not be rushed. So, not that there won't be one for this town meeting.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? Lori, you want to speak to your push on the, at the end? You're going to save it for the end? Okay. I'll save your thunder for the end then. Okay. Okay, moving on. Next on the agenda, Rockland Boards, Committees, and Commissions Handbook, January 2017, discussion. So, you know, I was trying to, I guess, introduce this topic at the last meeting. However, obviously, you guys were both unavailable to be there. So, you know, Donna, you're very familiar with this book. I think you were the first person to hand it to me the day I got elected.
Yeah, I
First
put it
thing.
together,
Yeah, you said learn it. So one of the things that, you know, and it's a great book, and one of the things that we've always talked about was some of the things that we've taken out of it that we have 100% adopted was we move our you know, election for chair to July 1 date, because it's the start of the new fiscal year, as opposed to having, you know, the issue of fairness for people coming onto a board newly elected, not having an opportunity to serve on the board, and just randomly on their first meeting having to vote a new chair, unless, of course, you know, there is a, you know, change in that position where that person's not back on the board. But one of the things that I always kind of hoped to accomplish was to really, you know, dig a little bit deeper into the roles and the expectations of the members of the Board of Selectmen, and I don't need to remind anybody, you know, some of the things that have occurred in the past that I think if we had a little bit more strict guidelines and understandings of what the expectation is for a member of the Board of Selectmen, I think we might have been able to avoid some of the things that occurred, or at least we'd have something to say, well, you knew, so, you know, this is, it's in writing anyway, rules and regulations. So one of the things that I had been asking is if somebody had gone to the MMMA meeting in early January, if they saw something that pertained to this topic, you know, as far as best practices for a Board of Selectmen, to bring it back and give us an opportunity to review it and see if it's something that we wanted to adopt. And, you know, I would say over, you know, I'd like to try to get this done at least at the latest probably by, you know, the April 4th meeting anyway, maybe even next week, but or the 321 meeting. But if we could do it, if you just take a look, and, you know, I made some red line changes that I'll be giving to Doug tomorrow, and I'll have them disseminated to the rest of the group. But if there's things that you see in the specific example, was it Auburn?
Yeah, it's at the end. It's
Yeah,
at
the
the
town
end
of Auburn.
of the Rockland book.
They had a really good one, and obviously, you know, we change the name to Rockland every time Auburn comes up. But there's a couple things in there that I think are really, really good that we might look to try to include into a new edition of the Boards, Committees, and Commissions Handbook that speaks specifically to, you know, the behaviors and the roles and expectations for members of the Board of Selectmen, and it might be, you know, more specific to Rockland anyway. So if you guys could just take a look at that over the next couple weeks, that'd be great. And if you guys have any changes that you want to make, you know, redline it, scan it, send it to Doug, and then, you know, Doug can combine it. We can talk about it at our next meeting, and we can review it and put something together, and hopefully vote on the final draft by the next meeting after that.
Okay.
All right?
Mike, can I ask you one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you envisioning like an update or like an appendix to the Rockland handbook, or are you thinking more of a separate standalone policy?
Well, I'm thinking, I mean, we have the Rockland handbook, and in the Rockland handbook, obviously, we take out whatever redundancies that we take from this other community, you know, but I think if we take a look and we compare what we currently have in the Rockland handbook versus this other town, which had a really good handbook, and if we can collectively come up with something that we think, all right, well, this is already here in Rockland, so we don't need to obviously change that. But if there is something that another town is doing something better, then we can change that portion of the Rockland handbook. And then anything else would just be amendments to the, Board of Selectmen specifically within the Rockland handbook.
Gotcha.
So I'm not looking to change anything in there unless it's something that, the members of the board see that might be, maybe a little bit, outdated possibly, and then, maybe new things that you can add in there that might be a better practice per se,
Yep.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns about that? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda. This is a tough one. Billboard host community agreement update.
Yep, so I included in your packet, I was just able to find on the Mass DOT website, their Office of Outdoor Advertising, confirmation that they have in fact denied the billboard application that the town approved. I've spoken with Attorney Guard, who was here at the prior meeting, because if you recall at the prior meeting, you agreed to extend the host community agreement because it was still in limbo since that time it was denied. The first step is an administrative appeal through the state, and I think that it's relatively speedy. So I expect that within this extension period, they should be able to appeal and get an answer.
Based on what?
Just basically, it's a different process.
Okay, different people on the other side looking at it?
Remind me, Tony, DALA, the Division of Administrative Law Appeals, something like that, I think. It's
Okay.
the acronym, but it's a whole separate agency, that's all they do, are administrative appeals like this. So it's not like they're appealing to the same people in Mass DOT that can just kind of drag their feet for months.
So there
and
is an
months and months.
expectation
there's
that
a process, and it's
okay.
expeditious, yeah.
Okay.
So my main point tonight was just to update you that it was in fact denied, and that they have indicated they want to appeal. Hopefully they'll win their appeal and we'll be good to go. If they lose on appeal and we hit the end of that extension period, then I think we'll need to regroup with them, and you will need to decide, how much longer you'll want to stay tethered to, an application that's been denied. But
Yeah.
there's a process, and hopefully they'll be successful.
Is the reason they denied it, did they think it's too close to the highway? Is
Yeah,
that-
what I'm told, kind of third hand, I don't have any more detail in writing compared to what I shared with you, but what I'm told anecdotally was that it's exactly the same issue that was brought up initially, that the state DOT engineers feel that it violates a regulation about how close it is to the off-ramp. The applicant feels that they've already set the precedent in other communities with other billboard approvals, that they measured it differently, and it is in compliance, and the applicant has provided that supplemental information, and I imagine that's going to be the basis of their appeal, is you've already approved the different way of evaluating it in these other towns, how come you're picking on us here? So-
It's another case of just an
Doing the pollution.
inconsistency on the behalf of the state and the bureaucrats within the state.
Right, yeah.
The inconsistency is on how they interpret the distance, and then obviously, we're well aware that there's a preferred spot where they want that the state would be more beneficial for the state, and they would have more income. They'd have income coming from this project, from a state level. So obviously they were going to deny the project that benefited the town more than the state. So we'll see if somebody, can put that together at the state level. But
Yeah. Okay.
anything else on that, Doug? Or-
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Next on the agenda, other old business not reasonably anticipated.
I have none.
Okay. Town administrators report and correspondence.
Thanks. I will be quick. The first is, as the board knows, I did attend a soft opening at the newest marijuana dispensary that's opened in town, Green Rock Cannabis at 1015 Hingham Street. Very professional operation, and they have to be professional because the State Cannabis Control Commission wouldn't let them open otherwise. So at that event, they did hand me their $25,000 initial payment toward their host community agreement. And as you could see from the slide I showed earlier with capital, I'm recommending that we fund over $1 million in capital purchases for public safety and highway, 100% funded from marijuana dispensaries. So that's been a great thing from the town. I wish them good luck. Relating to the fire station building project I mentioned earlier, I'll be with Chief Duffy tomorrow morning at the senior center. There's also we're going to be doing, the chief and I, on Friday the 10th, at one of our local 55-plus active living communities. We're going to be doing an outreach meeting there as well. And then on March 22nd, which is a Wednesday night, at the lecture hall, we're going to have a follow-up large public outreach meeting with the architects, and we'll have more information to share compared to the last meeting. We'll have more complete drawings, and especially the big thing everybody wanted, the numbers, the tax impacts and all that. And I should highlight again for the community, the Town of Rockland webpage, go to the fire department page on the left-hand side, there's a button for this project, and right on the top of that page is a calculator, and you can literally click it, put in your value of your home, and you can see what the estimated tax impact is. And just a caution again, I believe we put these words in the website. Don't base it on a Zillow estimate or what a market listing might be. It's based on the Town of Rockland assessed value, which generally lags the current market conditions. So if you don't know that, you can call the assessing department or look for that on the town website. But there's a lot of information there, including the calculator. One thing I didn't highlight on the list of capital items, which I should have, is it was brought to my attention that in 2024 will be Rockland's 150th anniversary. So just for discussion purposes, I threw in a capital request for $35,000 for a 150th celebration. I got that number from the Rockland Day Committee because that's similar to what they do to put on a large event. I think the Rockland Day Committee or some of them might be willing to help in that endeavor. So I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe we form a separate committee, or you can think about who you'd want to be involved with that, but that might be a really cool thing. I talked to some of the Rockland Day Committee about whether it should be combined with Rockland Day or a separate event altogether, and those are all things we should talk about.
So I've been working on this, I guess, for a while now. We used to do Restaurant Week around the town's birthday, March 9th. So next year would obviously be the 150th. I've been talking to John Lucas, quite a bit about this, and one of the things that he's going to do is he's going to take a look at a neighboring town that just celebrated a 400th birthday and see what they did. And I guess their hope is to kind of have some kind of a commemorative event each month of the year throughout the course of the year. So obviously, whatever budget impacts, we'll have to relay that to you beforehand and stuff like that, and we'll go from there. But they definitely have some big plans. So.
Yeah, be great. Two other quick ones. Maybe I'll hit the last one first because you just mentioned him again, and we have as well. I just want to thank John Lucas for his 11 plus years serving the town in the building department. He'll really be missed, and a few of us went to his retirement party, and I hope you don't mind, Mike, but I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit. But you used the word that I was going to use if I was going to speak, which was that of all the things about John, he's reliable, he's knowledgeable, he's professional, all that good stuff. But you said it, and it's true. He's just a true gentleman. And I think anybody that knows him, he's just a kind person who treats people with respect. He's a gentleman, and he's really going to be missed here in Town Hall, but he's still involved with Planning Board and Rockland Day and a bunch of other committees, too. So I want to wish him well in his retirement. And then on a more practical matter, the last thing is the Senate Ways and Means released a FY23 supplemental budget proposal that the Senate plans to take up Thursday. And the interesting thing with that is, it does include a provision to continue the allowance for remote meetings through March of 2025. So it would give us 2 more years of remote meetings. I just find it interesting that the legislature just keeps kind of kicking the can down and just, temporarily extending it. I don't understand for the life of me why they don't just make it permanent, but we'll take 2 more years. I think it's a good thing. Obviously this board meets in person, most boards do, but a few boards, when it's necessary, meet remotely, and it's really effective. And we have technology like this now that can make it easy. So we'll see if that passes. That's just the Senate. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Selectperson Childs.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am that I attended a charter review committee meeting last week, and they were gracious enough to have me speak, and we collaboratively decided that on this year's warrant for town meeting, we can put an article for gender neutral language, and our board, after the state approves it, it'll take about another year or so to do it. So to get the ball rolling this year was really important, to change the name of our board to the Select Board, which many towns do, and there's 2 reasons I think it's important. Optically, A change like this communicates to our constituents and residents that the town is moving progressively forward. And another bonus is it doesn't cost anybody one dime. So I want to thank everybody involved, and it also shows that if you come to our board with something that's really important to you that you would want on town warrant, you can just come to us, and we're really open to just about anything. So I just can't tell you how thrilled I am about this. Now let's do some more things to move the town forward after that.
Well, hopefully, Lori, hopefully it goes through for you, or for all of us. But
Yeah.
I think the first time we met after you got on the Board of Selectmen, it was
Yeah.
the first thing you asked if we supported it, and I said, yeah, go for it, do
Yeah.
it. So this is great that we were able to get it on
Yeah.
there. So I'm happy for you.
So yes, well, I'm happy for everybody. Thank you so much. And congratulations to John Lucas. And, and also if, I hear from residents all the time, like mostly complaints about this, that, or the other. And I say, well, if it's really important to you, why don't you just step up and run for something? Although it's too late to get it on the actual ballot, you can still run as a write-in candidate if you want to step up and run for something that you're passionate about. So I wanted to put that out there.
All right, thank you,
That's
Lori.
it.
Select Person Shorto?
I also want to congratulate John Lucas on his retirement. He's a great guy. The town hall will miss him, but I'm sure that he will still be a presence in town. So I hope he enjoys himself. He certainly deserves it. And I'd also like to send condolences to the family of Ruth Kelly. She passed away recently, and she was one of my election workers, and she was a very charming lady. We had a lot of laughs, and she will also be missed.
Thank you, Donna. Select Person Needham?
I would also like to congratulate and thank John Lucas. I was disappointed I wasn't able to make your retirement event, but you're a true inspiration for your involvement and your passion for the town of Rockland. So thank you, John. And thank you, Lori, for moving forward with the select board term. I think it's a great move. It was certainly one of my first questions, after becoming involved, saying, hey, so to be able to be progressive and to have a term that is more representative of our board, or at least where we are right now, I think is fantastic. So thank you for that. And tonight's meeting, as all of the meetings do, I just reinforces so many great things are going on, so many great things, a vision of the future. So I think it's a great day to be a Bulldog, and I'm always thankful to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Vice Chairman Norman?
I also want to join my colleagues in wishing John Lucas a long and happy retirement.
You good? All right.
Short and sweet.
All right, so I'll reiterate, what everybody said. John and I have been friendly for many years now. Like I said the other night, he is truly a gentleman, and he's the guy that comes to you with so many different ideas, and he was really a stabilizing force within that department as well, and always open to trying new things to make the town a better place. So, he'll slowly be missed, but to what you alluded to, Doug, he's not going away. He'll be around, I visited with some seniors up at Leisure Woods this past weekend. Talked to them for probably about 2.5 hours, answering their questions and concerns about pretty much all topics across the town, and just really talking to them, and we had a really good dialogue back and forth, and some of the things that they didn't quite understand as far as who's responsible for what departments that they could talk to. But I offered, obviously, I wrote your phone number on the wall over there so that they can call you with any questions or concerns going forward. But they're on board. They get it. They understand, and they did. When I left there, they seemed very appreciative of the work that we all do as a board. So they were pretty happy with that meeting. Also, Doug and I last night, we attended the Open Space Committee meeting. And it's a board that I don't think gets enough credit for the amount of work that they do and the amount of knowledge that they really have, and some of the knowledge, goes back a lot of years, but they're a very hard-working board, and they did, obviously, yeoman's work this past year with the McCarthy Farm, but yeah, it was very nice to sit down and talk to them and listen to what their plans are for open space for the town of Rockland going forward, so more to come on that. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, not to reconvene, with the Rockland Board of Health per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, Thomas Rubel versus Christopher Falco et al.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Select Person Shortall?
Yes.
Where am I looking? Select Person Shortall? I always go that way. I'm right. Select Person Childs?
Yes?
Select Person Needham?
Yes,
Vice Chair Nyman?
Yes.
And myself. Thank you. Good night.
good night.